The world held its breath this morning. In a sudden and unprecedented escalation, President Joe Biden ordered an airstrike on a Russian military base near Moscow. Intelligence reports indicate the strike targeted critical command infrastructure, aiming to disrupt ongoing operations that U.S. officials claim posed an immediate threat to American interests abroad. The implications of this strike are monumental. Russia has responded with heightened military alerts, while NATO allies convene emergency sessions to assess the rapidly evolving situation. Analysts warn that this could mark a turning point in U.S.-Russia relations, with potential reverberations across global energy markets, financial systems, and military postures worldwide. For viewers watching now, the stakes are immediate: global instability, energy price surges, and the potential for military escalation that could touch every continent. Understanding the full context behind this strike is critical, and in the coming sections, we will unpack the strategic, political, and economic ramifications in detail. If you want to stay informed as this story unfolds, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. This is a developing situation that demands careful, expert analysis. To understand the gravity of this moment, it is necessary to step back and examine the long and often volatile history between the United States and Russia. What unfolded today did not emerge in isolation. It is the product of years of mounting tension, strategic rivalry, and unresolved geopolitical fault lines. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, relations between Washington and Moscow initially showed signs of cautious cooperation. Arms reduction treaties were signed, diplomatic channels expanded, and there was a brief period where integration into a shared global order seemed possible. But beneath that surface, mistrust never fully disappeared. By the early 2000s, cracks began to show. NATO's eastward expansion became a central point of contention. Russia viewed the alliance's movement toward its borders as a direct threat to its sphere of influence, while the United States and its allies framed it as a sovereign choice for Eastern European nations seeking security guarantees. Tensions escalated further in 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea. This marked a decisive turning point. The United States responded with economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation measures, and increased military support for Ukraine. From that moment forward, relations entered a new phase, defined less by competition and more by open confrontation. In the years that followed, multiple flashpoints intensified the standoff. Cyber warfare allegations, election interference claims, proxy conflicts in Syria, and military buildups along Eastern Europe all contributed to a steadily rising level of hostility. Each incident added another layer to an already fragile relationship. Then came a series of more immediate developments. In recent weeks, intelligence reports suggested unusual Russian military movements near key strategic installations. Satellite imagery indicated increased activity at several bases, including locations believed to house advanced command and control systems. U.S. officials began signaling concern behind closed doors, warning of potential actions that could threaten NATO-aligned regions. Day by day, the situation escalated. Day 1. Reports emerge of heightened Russian military readiness. Day 3. U.S. intelligence flags possible offensive positioning. Day 5. Diplomatic backchannels intensify, but no public breakthrough is announced. Day 7. Emergency briefings take place within the White House and Pentagon. Day 10. The decision is made. The airstrike order today is the culmination of this timeline, a decision shaped by years of strategic friction and days of urgent intelligence warnings. At the center of this crisis are the key actors: the United States, asserting defensive necessity; Russia, framing the strike as an act of aggression; and NATO allies, now forced to navigate a rapidly shifting security landscape. What happens next depends not just on what occurred, but on how each side interprets it. In the early hours of the morning, under conditions of extreme secrecy, the operation was set into motion. According to initial reports from U.S. defense officials, the strike was carried out using precision-guided munitions launched from a long-range platform positioned well outside Russian airspace. The target: a high-value military installation believed to function as a critical command and control hub near Moscow. The timeline of the strike itself appears to have unfolded within minutes. At approximately 2:40 local time, radar systems in the region reportedly detected incoming aerial threats. Within seconds, air defense systems were activated. However, U.S. officials claimed that the strike package was specifically designed to evade detection, utilizing advanced routing, electronic countermeasures, and low observable technology. By 22:43, multiple impacts were reported at the designated target site. Satellite imagery released shortly after appears to show significant structural damage within the facility's core operational zone. Fires were observed burning for several hours, and secondary explosions suggested the presence of stored equipment or munitions within the compound. But what exactly happened, and why, depends heavily on which side you ask. From the United States perspective, this was a preemptive and narrowly targeted operation. Officials argue that the base was actively coordinating operations that posed an imminent threat to U.S. assets and allied forces. According to this narrative, the strike was both necessary and proportionate, intended to degrade a specific capability without triggering broader conflict. Russia, however, presents a starkly different account. Kremlin statements describe the strike as an unprovoked act of aggression against sovereign territory. Russian defense officials claim that the facility targeted was not engaged in any offensive operation at the time, and they accuse the United States of deliberately escalating tensions to a dangerous level. They further assert that their air defense systems intercepted a portion of the incoming threats, though independent verification of this claim remains unclear. This divergence in narratives is critical. On one hand, U.S. intelligence sources point to classified evidence, signals intelligence, satellite tracking, and intercepted communications that allegedly justified immediate action. On the other, Russia's denial raises questions about interpretation, miscalculation, or even the possibility of flawed intelligence. At this stage, several uncertainties remain unresolved. Was the threat truly imminent? Was the targeted base actively preparing an operation? Or was this a strategic move intended to send a broader geopolitical message? What is clear, however, is that this was not a symbolic strike. It was precise, deliberate, and highly consequential. And in moments like this, the difference between preemption and provocation can define the course of history. To understand why this strike carries such profound implications, one must examine the strategic value of the target itself. The military installation reportedly struck near Moscow is not just another base. It is believed to play a central role in Russia's command, control, and coordination infrastructure. Facilities of this nature serve as the nerve centers of modern military operations. They integrate surveillance data, coordinate troop movements, and manage communication between various branches of the armed forces. Disrupting such a hub, even temporarily, can create operational confusion and delay response times across multiple Razmakon theaters. Geographically, the location of the base is equally significant. Positioned within close proximity to Moscow, the installation exists deep Dakhel Russian territory, far from traditional front lines. This alone elevates the seriousness of the strike. It signals not just capability, but reach. The ability to project force into such a sensitive and heavily defended region represents a major escalation in operational scope. From a military standpoint, this changes calculations on both sides. For the United States, if the objective was indeed to degrade a critical command node, the strike may offer short-term tactical advantages. It could disrupt planning cycles, interrupt communications, and force Russia to reassess the security of its internal Razmakon infrastructure. But those advantages come with risk. Striking a high-value asset so close to the political gulb of Russia may be interpreted not as a limited action, but as a strategic provocation. Alaskari doctrine often treats attacks on command structures as precursors to broader conflict escalation. For Russia, the implications are immediate and serious. First, there is the question of vulnerability. If such a facility can be targeted, it raises concerns about the integrity of national air defense systems and early warning capabilities. Second, there is the issue of deterrence. Failing to respond decisively could be perceived as weakness, both domestically and internationally. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. Each side is now forced to reconsider its posture. The United States must prepare for potential retaliation, whether direct or asymmetric. Russia must weigh its response carefully, balancing the need to demonstrate strength against the chater of triggering a wider confrontation.
Beyond the immediate actors, the regional strategic picture is also shifting. NATO allies are now on heightened alert, particularly those in Eastern Europe. Military readiness levels may increase, intelligence sharing protocols may intensify, and contingency planning for worst-case scenarios is likely already underway. In essence, this is no longer about a single strike. It is about how that strike redefines the rules of engagement between two nuclear-armed powers. It challenges assumptions about geographic safety, operational limits, and escalation thresholds. And once those assumptions are broken, restoring stability becomes exponentially more difficult. As global leaders and military officials assess the aftermath of the strike, much of the world is now turning to intelligence agencies, defense analysts, and geopolitical experts for clarity. In moments like this, where information is fragmented and narratives sharply diverge, expert interpretation becomes essential. According to intelligence assessments circulating within Western defense circles, the strike appears to have been the result of high confidence, time-sensitive intelligence. Analysts suggest that the decision-making window may have been extremely narrow, indicating that U.S. officials believed delay could significantly increase risk. Former military strategists point to patterns consistent with preemptive doctrine. When a perceived threat reaches a certain threshold, particularly involving command and control infrastructure, rapid action is often prioritized over prolonged diplomatic signaling. In this context, the strike aligns with a doctrine designed to neutralize threats before they fully materialize. However, not all experts agree on the interpretation. Some analysts caution that intelligence, no matter how advanced, is never infallible. History offers multiple examples where misinterpretation of data led to unintended escalation. In closed-door discussions, certain policy experts are reportedly urging restraint, emphasizing the need to verify claims before drawing definitive conclusions about intent. At major international security institutes, the focus has shifted toward escalation dynamics. Experts warn that strikes targeting high-value assets inside a nuclear-armed state carry unique risks. Unlike battlefield engagements or proxy conflicts, such actions directly challenge national sovereignty at its core. This raises the ihtimal of a disproportionate response, not necessarily immediate, but potentially strategic and long-term. Military analysts are also closely examining the technical execution of the strike. The apparent qudrat to bypass or overwhelm air defense systems has sparked concern among defense communities worldwide. If confirmed, it could indicate a shift in the effectiveness of modern strike capabilities, reshaping assumptions about deterrence and defense readiness, not just in Russia, but globally. Meanwhile, economic analysts are beginning to assess secondary effects. Initial market reactions suggest heightened volatility, particularly in energy sectors. Even the perception of instability between major powers can trigger fluctuations in oil prices, currency markets, and global trade expectations. Experts warn that prolonged uncertainty could amplify these effects, impacting economies far beyond the immediate conflict zone. Another critical layer of analysis comes from diplomatic observers. They note that communication channels between the United States and Russia will now play a निर्णायक role. Crisis management mechanisms, often established quietly over years, may determine whether the situation stabilizes or spirals further. The absence of clear, credible dialogue increases the risk of miscalculation. Ultimately, the expert consensus is not unified, but it converges on one point. This moment is highly unstable. The combination of Lascari action, conflicting narratives, and limited verified information creates an environment where perception can be just as powerful as reality. And in such conditions, even small missteps can carry enormous consequences.